Hello. Before I begin, I wanted to make a couple of points. The first point is that in the future, I think I'm going to start creating more videos and posting them on the website. And I plan to do this more frequently. I think it's a good way for me to communicate many things that would otherwise consume a large amount of time if I were to write them down. And of course, many people would prefer to have audio and video content as well as written content. The other point is that I wanted to emphasize that any video that I make and post on the site that is for the public, I want to not only authorize that you can republish it onto YouTube or elsewhere, but I want to encourage you to do so. Once again, I want to encourage you all, if you do not have a YouTube channel, make one and repost my videos. But I would like them to get out to the YouTube community because there's a lot of sheep on YouTube. There's a lot of really misinformed, naive people on YouTube, unfortunately. And I'm discovering that more and more. I'm seeing a lot of propaganda on there, and it's a little disturbing to see. Okay, so I created a video introducing you to this book. It was written in 2010. I want to emphasize a few things about the book. First of all, this book will be valuable in 2013, 14, 15, 16, 2020. Like all of my books, this book is not dated. Most books that you will come across are not too relevant a few months after they were released. Most definitely a year after they were released. I'm pretty confident if you ask anyone who's read any of my books, they will tell you that my books remain very valuable many years after they were written. Why? Because my books are always written in an educational standpoint. I try to educate people so that they can learn from the content in the books several years later. And that's kind of, one of the things that I like to pride myself on. And the second thing is, of course, many people will be turned off by the $50 price tag of the book. I want to just say a couple of things. You're not going to find a book like this anywhere in the world. This is the most comprehensive book on the healthcare system, on America's healthcare system ever written. How do I know that? Because if I'm going to write a book, it's going to be the best of its kind ever written, or I won't write the book. Because I don't have the writing skills, I don't have the professional editorial assistance. Since publishers have banned me, I don't have all these things to be able to provide a value add. So my value add is the unique research, analysis, and insight that I provide in the book. And hopefully you will agree with that. And of course, the second point is that anyone who is not familiar with self-publishing will not understand. The economics are completely different. If a publisher were to take on my book, they would print out a large number of copies, and the book cost to them would be probably less than $1 per book. After all marketing and associated fees, book distribution, and so forth, we'd probably be looking at $5, $6, maybe $7 at most per book. But that's in the publishing industry. Because I have exposed the reality of our mafioso healthcare system, of course I've been banned, and so I've had to go the non-traditional route. It's very costly, and these books are printed by print on demand, which is very costly. So I'm actually not making hardly anything off of each of these books. But I will tell you, as someone who values unique insight, valuable insight that you can't get elsewhere, that personally myself I would have paid several $100s for this book because of the vast amount of information, the comprehensive nature of the book, and the unique proprietary analysis. Anyway, so I wanted to give you a flavor of what is in the book. I created a website for this book. The URL is America's Healthcare Solution. It's the same as the title. americashealthcaresolution.com without the apostrophe S, of course. And if you go to that website, you will see there's a lot of excerpts. So if you don't want to buy the book, at least you'll have an idea about the overall flavor, the overall message of the book, because it's on the website. That's the key thing. I want people to get an idea about the realities of healthcare. So at the very least, hopefully, you will go to the site and you'll read the book excerpts, because there are numerous excerpts. I don't think you're ever going to find anybody, any publisher, who's going to provide this amount of excerpts. I've provided numerous pages of excerpts. These publishers, of course, they're selling all kinds of books. I've hardly sold any of these books, so I'm essentially giving a lot of it away for free, because I feel it's very important for people to have at least a introductory idea of what is going on in our healthcare system. Once again, the problem will remain with or without Obamacare. The real problems of healthcare in America are not being addressed at all. And of course, I do address each and every one of those problems in this book. I also dispel the numerous myths that are out there. And of course, that list is very long, because the media has created all these myths about, the need for tort reform and many other myths out there. One example is that the vast majority of Americans, I can guarantee you, aren't even aware of the fact that taxpayers already fund a universal health care system. That is to say, we already pay enough for a universal health care system. That is a system of health care whereby everyone is covered. We pay enough for that, but we're not getting it. We're paying twice as much as the best healthcare systems in the world, which are in Europe, Western Europe, and Japan, paying twice as much as they are. Why are we paying that much? Where is the money going? Well, the money, quite simply, is going to feed the beast. It's going to feed the countless numbers of healthcare jobs that are unneeded and that are inefficient and that are causing an ungodly amount of medical errors. And I'm talking, of course, about all these healthcare designations that you keep hearing about, new ones every year, right? Physician's assistant's tech, nursing assistant, all this baloney. I mean, how many healthcare titles do we have now? How many types of healthcare positions do we have in our system? 30, 40, 50, not counting, of course, the physicians. I'm talking about the ancillary positions. This is part of the problem in our healthcare system. And it's also part of the reason why the government doesn't want to address it, because it's providing millions of jobs. Now, these jobs are not needed, they're inefficient, they're causing a healthcare bubble. But where else are jobs going to come from, right? Another part of the problem is that America's healthcare system leads the world in medical errors, which I alluded to earlier. All that aside, the key issue is cost. Now, getting back to why the system's so costly, you have to feed the beast, right? It's really too lengthy of a discussion to go into right now, but essentially what we're also talking about, not only feeding everyone involved in the healthcare system, but also, of course, we also need to feed the profitability of these healthcare related companies. If you want to see where the extra $1 trillion or so is going of waste, then just look at a plot, a 10 or 20 year plot of the S&P 500 versus Merck Pharmaceuticals, Bristol Myers, United Healthcare, and so forth. And you're going to see tremendous outperformance. That outperformance is a reflection of the excessive profitability of these companies. You cannot have a system of efficient, competent healthcare that serves the best interests of patients when you have a healthcare system that is tied into profit. Healthcare and profit are not compatible. Profits will never be sacrificed for good healthcare. You're always going to have profits taking the priority to healthcare, to good healthcare. That means you're going to have people losing their lives, people remaining ill in the name of profits. And that's just simply the way it is. It's the same thing with education. You cannot have an educational system that is for profit that's going to be efficient, that's going to provide the best education. The emphasis is always going to be on profitability. The same thing with our prison system. So the point is that anything that is a basic necessity, you cannot have in a private market system, or you're going to have exploitation, you're going to have collusion. because the industry, the players know that you need it. They know that you need gasoline. They know that you need electricity and natural gas. They know that you need health care, and they're going to collude and raise prices. And that is what we have in America. It's exactly what we have in this country. I also talked about that actually in the 2006 book, America's Financial Apocalypse. And so I'm just going to go through, and you can see covered numerous sections of the book. And once again, the website is americashealthcaresolution.com. So at the very least, hopefully you will spend some time reading this book. Even better, of course, if you buy the book, support my work, and to get a much better, more detailed understanding of what's going on. I think everyone owes it to themselves to really understand what's going on in the healthcare system and what the real solutions are. Your life depends on this, and otherwise, we're talking about a potential bankruptcy down the road. Each and every one of you potentially could file for medical bankruptcy at some point. We have a very fraudulent healthcare system, and that's what needs to be emphasized. That's what needs to be addressed. And until America addresses its reckless, destructive healthcare system, America will never, ever recover from any type of economic situation. In fact, I would argue that America will continue in many ways to remain in its downward trajectory of economic decline and living standard compression as long as the healthcare system remains unfixed. So that's about it. That's all I wanted to say right now. Hopefully in the future I will continue this series and speak a little more in detail about some of these issues